welcome to the Brown China Summit 2023. I am joined by David Chu, legendary fashion entrepreneur, and by Niels Juul, producer and fashion entrepreneur as well. Guys, thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So if I may, I'd like to start with Mr. Juul first. You growing up, did you think that you would get into fashion or entrepreneurship for that matter, or film? What was your path? What was your growing up like?
Well, I was very silly, and I thought back in the early days in Denmark, growing up there, that I was going to become a film director. So I had set my sights on becoming the next Spielberg or Scorsese, and which is equivalent to saying I like to be an astronaut. So the bottleneck up there is pretty tight. So I had to take a very sort of unusual route to get into the film business. I started in advertising originally. It's a field that I love. It's creative. I suppose essentially I like to be at the bridge between the creatives and the money, in a way, if I could say it that way. And advertising led to luxury goods, led to a career around the world, basically living both in Asia, in Europe, in the US multiple times, living in many, many countries. And one thing led to another, and ended up in the fashion business. And I thought, wow, this is a good spot in which you can actually take creativity and business and merge it into a product, into a lifestyle, into a category, and try to sustain brands, etc. So I started my career there, or my mid-career, I'd say, and then through mysterious ways ended up in the film business, and thereby reaching a full circle from when I set out in Denmark as a 16-year-old thinking I was going to be Spielberg. Didn't end up becoming a director, but I ended up becoming a producer, which is probably more fitting for me anyway. So there you go. That's the path.
Great. And how about for you, Mr. Chu? What was your early path like?
Oh, I actually fell into this in fashion design by accident. Growing up, actually, I love to draw, so I'm relatively a good illustrator. Going through, going to getting ready for university, I was thinking about, do I study architect? Do I study, something related to the thing I'm visual. I'm a very visual person. So, but, not, applying for an architect school in New York at the Cooper Union at the same time, didn't get in that season. And a summer course of illustration got me interested, and the professor convinced me to study fashion design. That's how I got into fashion design. And just pure accident. And once you're in the design business, it's really about solving issues and looking at combination things, and it's related to art. And just by getting involved in design school, how do I, this is how I got into fashion design. And it turned out to be once you're in the business, you learn the business, and you always want to do something on your own. And in '83 I started this company, Nautica, because pure out of the passion, something I related to, and I want to do something on my own. And that's how it begins, basically, by accident. Sometimes life is a very strange road.
To that point,
and going back to, again, think about being an architect. Now my dream is always try to do something related to architect. So working a lot with different architects, and really being quite a fascinating journey for me.
To that point of windy roads, I think at this age, a lot of us students are career advice is being thrown at us left and right, and a lot of it's a lot of uncertainty. And both of you seem to have had very interesting and fruitful careers, but sort of windy paths. What do you think was what was the through line as you sort of navigated the roller coaster that kept you maybe following your passion or following creativity, or what was the thing that stayed consistent through all your different evolutions? That can fit for both of you.
Well, I'll start. And by the way, I will say this, David. Pink Floyd, all of them started as architect students. So there's the hope still, David, to go back to being architect. For Pink Floyd, they went and did dark side of the moon and all sorts of things, and maybe they could be architects again one day. Let's see. Anyway, big admirer. Honor to be on the panel with you. I'm such an admirer from you from afar, and your career is outstanding, and blessed to be in your company today. For me, in terms of my path, the one thing I will say always, and when I do speak at colleges, etc., is authenticity, really. I mean, be authentic to yourself, trying to listen to the inner voice rather than what the world is telling you what to do, including parents, including professors, including anyone else. If it feels right to you somewhere in here, it's usually right. I mean, there's a reason why people say gut feeling. And gut feeling, I think, is a great expression that is overlooked for what it means, because the gut is where all our health is and where our emotions lie. And if it feels right in your gut, you should probably look after and into it. And I've done that my whole career. That's why it's been such a weird path, because when it didn't feel right, I would leave, simply leave. And it shocked my parents many times, because I would walk away from big paychecks and careers and things. But if I didn't feel right, and if the people that I worked with didn't feel right either, I would literally just walk away. And I think that's been my driving force. And then this other driving force that I've had is I do like to work in creative fields, and I do like work with creative people because it is just an inspiration. And so what I provide to creative people usually is being that bridge that could talk to the money and that could talk to the creatives and make everybody understand each other, because sometimes those languages don't really align, but one thing can't live without the other. And that's been my driving force, and the place where I sit the best is in that sort of intersection. And sometimes it's as a CEO, sometimes I'm a producer, sometimes an executive producer, but that drives me. And what drives me the most is obviously seeing that creativity come together and then create something special, and then, you know, seeing the end results, whether that's in fashion or in movies. It's always remarkable when it comes together. So, yeah.
You know, I totally agree with Niels on that. I think at the end of the day, every person, the path is always different. You got to pick your own, and you know, it's really follow your passion. That's I've always been doing, and you know, I was very fortunate, you know, able to you know, been through the training and able to start a brand in '83, and then able to see it through for 20 some years. And able to now picking things that I really enjoy doing. So it's quite a journey. And I said now, you know, most of the time I look at things I enjoy doing. I think I enjoy the process of creativity. And that's one thing I enjoy, even though many guys says, you know, after I sold Nautica in 2004, and they say, you know what, you probably do whatever you want. I says, well, I always kind of enjoy what I do. So basically, I just kind of pick the project that I enjoy doing, and I involve myself, and also working with people has very similar mindset. I think that really is part of the journey in life that you enjoy doing with. I think, you know, if you're gonna, as I say, you're going on a journey, you have to check your bag when you got, and you got to pick the partner you want to go with. And I think that's one of the things important for me. And, you know, after I'd done that, and a few years later, I met up with people that ran Tumi, and I got involved in Tumi travel gear because I thought the brand lost its weight a little bit. And then restructure, redesign the whole collection, and make it into a more premium. We made a part of the collection in Italy, and to elevate the concept, because Tumi was a very American concept originally. I want to make it more international. So by doing that, by bringing other elements in Italy and the craftsmanship you can bring in besides just the product that was produced in the US at that time, change the dynamics of the brand. So I think, you know, every creative process, you need to have new ingredients. You know, I think people talk about it between when the fashion business and so-called the business of whatever we get involved is about the money side. But I think money is really the byproduct of what you do with passion, and you do it well with, and the money comes with it usually after that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, David. And by the way, just for the record, I do have a Tumi right here because you did revitalize the brand so beautifully. So I'm a big fan of Tumi.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because you did a great job in turning that around. Really beautiful job. But I will just want to second what David that is an interesting part of this equation is that the collaborations that you do between people in order to enhance a brand or a product, which often goes cross borders, and it often becomes so that you take whatever you have in your idea and you bring it to another culture, and that other culture is going to say, hey, have you thought about this? Like Von Dutch, for instance, we took it to Japan, and some designers in Tokyo said, hey, what about doing it like that? And we were like, oh my God, that's so much better. And, then we went back to LA with the brand and said, what do you think? And anyway, so that's the part of the process I agree with. That is very inspirational for sure.
You say, you mentioned about this because never actually I've been to Scandinavia a few times and didn't really get involved with Gil Jensen till 2013. Well, I happened to live, when I was living in New York, Gil Jensen had a store on 63rd and Madison Avenue. So I always walk past, fascinated with the design language. And that's when the land name became available to me, I jumped on it because I thought it had a very different, view.
Yeah.
Even, from the simplicity and the modernity, it really made what Jensen was, and then, of course, the look of the Danish concept, it really came on board. So when I went there, one of the things that fascinates me, because one of the most famous chair in Denmark, it's done by Hans Wagner, I guess, that is that white chair.
The white chair.
Everybody now knows. It's that white chair, that circulated chair. And you know what? I was visiting the museum by Hans Wagner, and basically they have the museum, how that chair came from. The collector, actually the owner and founder, had a museum about that chair, and he started collecting Ming chair from China, from the Ming dynasties, those engine chairs. Now you can see the shadow. You can see the shadow of that chair, the background, what the original modernity of that chair came out of the Ming chair, the original with the circulate chair. So, you can see how the culture influence each other so many different ways. So and that's what's fascinating for me about traveling, look at different culture and design, because, we all human and they interact for thousands of years. And culture transcends. The authenticity, as you call it, transcends through almost every human culture. And, they always adopt what's the best and made it was the next level of the future of the globalization, what we are living in today, I think, to some degree.
I agree with that, David. Very interesting. Yep.
It was a good story, fascinating. I always like to tell that story when I was, traveling to Denmark. And then, when I came back to China, I always tell the people that, it's fascinating what you see. They thought this is a beautiful Danish chair. I say, it's a beautiful reinterpreted combination. But you know what? That's design, though. Design is about interpretation of different ideas.
Absolutely. I love, but by the way, I love that story. I'm going to tell it to my Danish friends because they always think, oh, what you did with it. But, it's an inspiration.
You can show the respect of the founder of Hans Wagner, what he liked about design. He's thinking global back in the 50s. He's already had that chair. He's been collecting in the 20s and the 30s. And he already used that as an evolution. It became a new collection, a new design. And that chair is now a classic. It's even more known than the main chair itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anyway, that was great.
Love it.
Fantastic.
Sorry, Oliver. Got carried away a little bit.
No worries. No worries.
Because we're going to go into it over and over and over again.
Okay.
Old-fashioned executives, and we're going to be on here forever. So
all right.
Be careful.
Okay. I wanted to talk to you guys next about Nautica and Von Dutch respectively. And specifically, what were your biggest lessons learned, and how do those lessons now inform your new ventures? Whether that for you, Mr. Juul, whether that's being more into the film executive side, for you, Mr. Chu, George Jensen, Tumi, etc. What do you make of your biggest takeaways from your sort of early career success?
Well, for Von Dutch, we learned many lessons, obviously, because we created something that we didn't know how big it was going to get when we set out to do it. And we literally sort of exploded before we were ready for it. We had created something we thought very special and authentic in terms of a brand. And we were directly going after sort of being an aspirational brand. And we took sort of this rock and roll culture, counterculture, and we blended it in with the designs that we had been doing. And we did have an ability to sort of penetrate the cultures that mattered for that, meaning rock, like motorcycle cultures, etc., and sort of the lead rock and roll players in the time in Los Angeles, like Metallica and people like that, started wearing our gear and whatever. But I think the biggest lessons I learned, and we learned the hard way, was, well, how do you manage a brand when it goes ahead of you, right? When it has a life on its own. And we exploded globally in a way that we weren't really ready for. And then it actually became a matter of containment, right? It became a matter of, can we withstand the world pressure and the economics of this and the explosive sales by also maintaining authenticity of the brand and what we had created in terms of the ethos and the lifestyle around it. And that's any brand's problem at trajectory. I always equate it to a band, right? You come out and you're a band that you're known for playing a certain thing, and your audience wants you to play just that. And if you try to divert away from it, you're losing your core group. You might sell out in a bigger group, but now you lost your core, and that's the same with the brand. So that was the biggest struggle for us. And then the biggest lesson that I learned is that you better make sure that your back end, meaning your machine, meaning your sourcing, your infrastructure, and all these things, the sort of boring stuff, the machine room, can handle the expansion, the fast expansion. And in fashion, when you expand very fast, as David will also tell you, your cash requirement becomes insane. And you deal in the global market, and you're sourcing, and you have department stores, etc. They expect you to operate almost like a bank for them, because they pay in 9 months, and then you get product back and chargebacks and markdowns, and you name it. It's not an easy industry to be successful in fashion on a global scale. So I think if there's a takeaway that I would say that I rather we had done at the time, was a little more patience with the brand, and that we had said no a lot more than we said yes at the time. But we were young, happy guys, and we also wanted Porsches and Ferraris and shenanigans and whatever. But I think patience would have been better. And I think in the other endeavors, when I've gone in to consult on other brands, I've definitely told them to make sure that the machine can sustain your growth and that your cash flow is okay. And secondly, that you don't have to sell out from the brand and over license it, etc., in order to create the EBITDA and the cash flow and the money required to sustain your actual, apparel operation. So that's probably my biggest takeaway from the fashion business.
Yeah, I think I very much agree. I think that the balance in the fashion business of the combination of the art and the science of our business, it's really always striking that balance. I think that, of course, when the creativity of the part in our industry is quite interesting. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. If it's 1 + 1, if it's right, it's probably 10. If you can have 3 + 3, throw a lot of money, and then end up with 0. So in our business, there's no particular one formula. I think it's really the intuition and combination with some of the discipline, I think, is very important in our business. And I find that I think understand the market and I think in our industry, when people always say to me, "What did you do how do you create this concept and the vision of Nautica?" And I always told them that in the beginning, I was a young guy, and it was not really about a vision on what I wanted to create. I think I want to just like enjoying what I do, creating a product collection that I can be proud of. And one thing leads to another, strike the chord with a lot of people in the consumer side, people really enjoying the product we create. It became a significant size business. And of course, once you get that size, and I realized that we need to bring professional teams and people that really know how to managing and really striking the right balance to produce the right consistency and the quality, to creating a product that really has a continuity, you know, and I think a lot of it still comes from within your intuition. But at the end of the day, you know, once you get to a certain size, you need to have some kind of discipline. And you know what, as you say, the money does come because it's the success of those combination and the honest science of the business. At the same time, you know, but money, it's like air. You basically, this business needs to have enough air to take you through to a certain level, you know, and you know, so these are the managing part. People, yeah, everybody have analyzed, you know, creating a product, creating a success. Sometimes in our industry, I see quite a lot. But to have a brand that's sustained over a period of a long period of time, that it's not as easy as how people say it. You know, that's why I'm so interested, like involved with, you know, after I, you know, done with my Nautica concept and I kind of exit after I took a rest. And then when I got involved with a brand like Tumi, which is not that, but it's a little bit older than Nautica does. And what eventually got into Jensen is quite a different experience. You know, that was managing a heritage brand over 115 years, 120 years. It's a very different type of thinking and process versus managing a brand that you come out with a new culture and matching to the right culture with the right product. I mean, these are the things that it's a multidimensional chess game in the way I think. It's a little bit like that. So I think it's a very complex, but it's a very interesting, challenging, I think. It's a very much of a, not only come from the passion side, but come from an intellectual side. You need to really think it through from a longevity of managing the brand, as you say, and you got to identify. And that's with the technology are changing so fast today, how you're starting a fashion business now are very, very different than what I started 30, 40 years ago. And how Jensen started maybe 100 years ago. You know, back then, maybe, you know, the design and the development is not so fast and the people that appreciate the stuff is not as mass. But today, the market is massive. But, you know, how you get to it, yeah, it's many, many different to do it, many different ways. I think the young generation just got to find a new formula. I mean, stepping on the other experiences, I think there's a new way to do it. There's always a new way to do it.
Yeah, Mr. Chu, to that. Yeah, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, I think that's what's interesting about the fashion business. And also, I mean, I always watching the film business. I mean, enjoy it. So I'm glad that having this chance to chat with Neil because, you know, the film business, you know, the people actually in the film business or any creative business, it has the very similar type of, you know, process, you know, and I think, you know, the difference you can see, I mean, this is my view. I'm not so sure, but you know, Neil can probably explain better. You know, one of the reasons is that when the creativity, when you're creating a film, to creating a concept or like a brand, initially is great, but after a while, how to sustain it? Fashion has more of a longevity and continuity, and then you're able to do it. The film now, I can beginning to see the industry has gone that same direction. They're making the same concept and just making it in 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, it's a very similar type of model now, to some degree. I mean, sometimes I get a nice surprise. You know, like you know, I was watching the Star Wars movies. Like, you know, when I first saw Star films, I said, "How do you get you know, how you outdo yourself?" But they continue to do that for many different series. You know, so I think that's a creative process. It's a creative thinking, and depend what the team you put together, and you can surprise and bring values and to your to so-called your consumer that really kind of appreciate, and that's the thing that makes it intriguing, that you want to go out and get inspired, get new ideas, you know, and that's part of the fun, I guess.
Mr. Juul, I you know, on the point of your film career now, you've had the chance to work with director Martin Scorsese, and I was just wondering, what that's been like. How's he been as a producing partner, a director, but also a friend, and what has that collaboration been like, and what have you brought from your days at Von Dutch to help empower him and his vision as a director?
Well, Yeah, I'll second a little bit what David said correctly, which is like the creative process within the film business is actually very, very similar to the fashion business. At the end of the day, you're only as good as the design. So let's say, Martin Scorsese, in the case of the film business, is the designer, right? He has the concept, the ideas, the thought, the vision. This is his baby. And in this case, that's the script. And so when I initially was brought in basically as a CEO fixer type of person, because I've done a number of companies where I come in and I help them sort of turn their destiny around, which was one Dutch in the day as well. And Martin Scorsese happens to be one of the most remarkable human beings I've ever met. So first and foremost, you sit in the room with him and you feel like saying, you probably don't get the Garth analogy from Wayne's World, but I felt like saying, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. It's a movie reference from the 90s, so you guys don't get it, but it's fine. But anyway, he's the larger than life human being, arguably the best director the world has ever seen, alongside a handful of others, and consistently good and consistently smart. And you go into his office and you work with someone like him, you are just in awe of the talent, right? And I've also worked with some of the greatest designers, and I've had the pleasure of meeting the likes of Giorgio Armani and Paul Smith and the Dolce Gabbanas, etc. And whenever you're in the room with people of that level of creativity, your job is really just to make sure that you don't F it up for them, right? I said F, by the way, because this is a school, right? So I'm not supposed to. But as a is much like the CEO in a fashion company or whatever, is that you want to get them to feel the best about themselves and their product, but you also want to make sure that they deliver their vision on budget and on time. And whether that's with Scorsese or Michael Mann, I just finished working with Michael Mann. It's a balancing act, right? And I always call it like Guns and Roses. Basically, you got to give them a lot of roses and say, hey, come on, let's do it, and this and that, and the tools to succeed with their vision, which in the case of a film, it's a lot of work. It's many years. It's a lot of effort. Fundraising is insane. Getting a whole package together, foreign sales, domestic, you name it. It's a case of really long-term involvement, and you got to be ready for long haul. But your job is to make sure that the creator, the designer, in this case Martin Scorsese, can make his vision come true. But on the other hand, I have a responsibility to the investors, to the financiers, to the studios, to the people that are distributing this, and etc., that this get finished on time, on budget. So with that, when I say the Guns and Roses, occasionally in my position, you also have to do the guns, right? So you have to balance that act to be their best friend, a designer or director or whoever that may be you're working with creatively, but you also have to be sort of the bad cop sometimes and make sure that things are handed over. Because I always say that the creative curve goes like this for any creative. It goes like this, and then it dips. Because a lot of amazing directors, designers, and I'm not saying this is Scorsese necessarily, will overthink their product or overthink their design or overthink the script or overthink the project. And you got to catch them when they're at the top and say, now it's time to hand over. Thank you very much. We're going to take this one. Cut. Done. And that's the art, right? So as a producer, if you are or executive producer or a CEO of a fashion company, that is really my role, is to nurture, protect, but also lead them to the point of the top of creativity and then hand over, and on we go. That's really my role in film, which was much like the same role I've had in the fashion companies that I've been in.
And how do you think you know what that sort of that peak is that you were talking about? Like, is it a feeling? Is it experience?
It's obviously a collaborative effort between multiple people and producers and the directors. But because, I mean, the truth of the matter is most very creative people also have a high level of insecurity. And also a disease everybody suffers from is never good enough-itis. Never good enough-itis is a joke I make with people, designers especially, right? Because they will over-design and add a new thing, and you have a T-shirt and then another graphic and this, that, and the other. I said, stop, enough. Now you're over-designing it. Now it started looking like a Christmas tree. What you had was great. Pull back now, right? Same on the movie. So Do I know exactly? No, but I do know, when it's great or when it's good enough. Now, that doesn't mean it's perfect, but it means that it's time to hand it over to someone else who can edit it or who can, go into production. Like David will tell you, design is only a beginning, right? Because then you got to get the production manager, or you get the sourcing, you got to get the fabric, you got to get There's a whole process after that. Same with the screenplay, right? You're finished with the screenplay, then you got to add the actors. It's a long process, and a lot of people are waiting for that moment when the actual creator hands it over. And that is in the fashion business, as David will tell you, that's 6 times a year. That's collection that's going to come on time, on budget, real quick. And if you're late delivering to Bloomingdale's, you're being penalized with points and stuff. So in the case of film, if you're late on the production side, on my first movie, Silence, you're talking a budget that is $280,000 per day. So you can imagine if you go over by a week, you have some banks that are saying, stop, what are you doing? Right? And they will come to you and they'll say, hey, you're over by a week. We're going to hold back the bond money right now. And now you're in trouble. You have 400 people out in Taiwan running around trying to shoot and get paid, but they can't be because the bond company cut you off. So there's a reality to deal with as well there. That we deal with in the world. Like David said, you need air is cash, right? So that's the essence of having to do that particular thing when the creative curve goes, right? So it's also a necessity.
It's true. Creative, I have to say, a good designer, a good creative person, for them is the chasing of the perfection. They're perfectionists.
Yeah.
The problem is that, there is a combination, but also creative process. I mean, art is never perfect.
Yeah.
Imperfection is perfection.
Yeah.
So I think when you look at, a lot of time people say, I want to achieve perfection, but what is the perfection? Is the eye of the beholder and the combination of things. And I think that's why I think the able to have someone in the professional, have the discipline and able to work together with the right creative mind and to say, okay, this is at a certain level that we have to move on to the next stage, because this is a process. At the certain stage, you make a design. Let's say the selection in the beginning of the brainstorm session, you have a lot of product and ideas. Then at the end of the day, a good eye, I find really is the overall, like the producer. For me, being a designer in the beginning, when you start a company, you do everything. But as you stay and you elevate into a different process, you become almost a creative editor. You have to think it through. What do you want to achieve, the overall concept? And what do you want your brand to say? What does your brand stand for? Who to stand with? And what do you want the brand, the ultimate message? So I think it's the editing of the combination of the message, the detail, the makeup, and the what the evolution needs to be is what I think the process is. And the producer, of course, the business decision making has got to take it to the next level. And I think some people we have in our industry understand the total process. Some understand a combination of the step. So that's why the ability to be able to put together a team is very, very crucial. And all successful brands you see out there, it's really the 2 or 3 top people, a combination, able to put that group together early. They're able to have the same vision and also have the same discipline. Then you got an amazing concept. A lot of times that I see, But again, there's always a new one coming. That's why fashion brands probably the most, every decade there's always new brand coming on the scene.
Yeah.
And that's why we're always like the tide. It's like surf. They're always going to be the next wave. And every generation have its own wave. Like the music, like the movies, like the creative industry. It's every 10 to 15 years, you have a new ideas, a new wave, and that creates it. The music industry is the same way. We see, the only thing is that it's a different way to deliver it. I always say, Grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and you think about it, right? I bought the same music probably 5 different times with 5 different way to media. So in the industry, it is very different, and how we enjoying. I also have to say, with the new technology, as it will bring the convenience, how we use the same content. That's right. Good brand, good content, it's timeless.
Yeah.
The authenticity of the right content is timeless. I think human nature would tend to enjoy going back to the roots in our gut feeling, and as you're saying that the idea, it's always go back to the things that we enjoy.
On that note, Mr. Chu, for you and for fashion, how do you think technology has changed the business? And how do you think that you at George Jensen or any of your other various projects have implemented technology to empower the brand instead of perhaps dilute or change the brand? Like, how do you use technology to help empower your company?
I think the biggest change the last, I will say, 30 years, I've seen the innovation of fashion industry has come from the material, the ingredients. For years, for hundreds, maybe in our human existence, the natural fiber of cotton and wool and cashmere and silk has been the majority of what we used to as the ingredients. But I think the last 20 years, the innovation of the technical fabrics that came out of the so-called synthetic industry has really changed the way how we use material in ingredients. It's a little bit like the food, right? If you eat certain type of food and how thing has changed over the years, how the food get processed, but also the technology for the industry, the fashion, the sustainability, as now the world is moving towards, all the pollution and the airs and the global warming. The sustainability is such a big movement now. I think the synthetic industry is able to probably recreate, because they've been creating a lot of junk and a lot of stuff, the polyester and the nylons. And now when I grew up, the polyester was like a dirty word to wear polyester and nylon, but today, the new technology have the extrusion of the new technology of the fiber and the yarn and the sustainability and the reprocess of these materials has changed the industry to some degree. And today, what you're wearing, if you think about some of the things you don't even think about, most of the people that wear the pants have now stretch capability. Before, if you just wear pure denims, they get saggy, they get, things like that. These are subtle evolutions of the industry has shifted. And the tech industry has changed a lot, what you can do with the clothing today, like what you wear outdoor today is now waterproof. Everything is breathable, waterproof, sustainable. These are, I think, the new evolution, which I'm excited about. And the innovation will come from the ingredients. Because as a designer, the more ingredients you have, the more creative you could become. So I think that I'm really excited about that evolution, because when I was doing Nautica, we use mostly cotton and wool and things that's really natural fiber, which is really comfortable to you to wear. But today, if you're going out there, the tech fabric now can wicking your sweats, can cool the yarns. When you wear it in a hot temperature, the yarn is cooler. I mean, all these finishings are making your modern life more comfortable. I think that's a big movement. If you think about it, right? I mean, how the Lululemon of the world has changed how people exercise, work out, how they wear. It's a very, very interesting trend from that point of view. And I think that's why, I actually, a few years ago when I came back to Asia and I took over one of my family business in the manufacturing and also on the textile side. I created a tech industry. So we start creating new materials. And that's what I'm very excited about doing. It's using new synthetic material combination, blending with the new technology, and how you create new tech fabrics. It's quite fascinating. It's fun for me anyway. It's like being a chef, right? You go in there, you're finding how do you make your vegetable more organic? I mean, it's a similar concept, way. I think that's a major movement right now, I see. And that's really something I'm excited about.
Fantastic. Um, for you, Mr. Juul, I know me and a lot of my friends and a lot of kids my age are really excited about the Enzo Ferrari biopic that I know you are the producer on, Killers of the Flower Moon as well. Can you tell us anything about those movies, or is it completely under wraps as of now?
Well, what can I tell you? I can tell you that the Ferrari movie has taken me 12 years to get off the ground with Michael Mann, who
Wow.
is one of the best directors. Well, yeah, he's an amazing man to work with, but it was a difficult movie to get made. We've had a number of, I mean, the film business is, well, like fashion, but film business is also a lot of things are out of your control when you put things together. So on the Ferrari movie, I can tell you that we were supposed to do it already back in 2010 with Christian Bale in the lead role of Enzo Ferrari, but then he had done a movie called American Hustle where he had gained a lot of weight, and his doctor had advised him against losing weight and gaining weight again. So he jumped off after we had signed him on to be in the movie. So they fell through. And then, everything is obviously a calendar in Hollywood, because if you lose an actor for one window that you had around the movie, well, then, there goes your shooting, meaning you're on to the next search for the next lead actor. And Michael Mann had redrafted the script that that was in great shape. So we kept on going, and 2 years later, we had another actor, which was Hugh Jackman, who was also cast for the movie, brilliantly well done, and he was a great actor for it. And then we had COVID hit. Hello, and then coming out of COVID, we still had Hugh Jackman, but then our schedule didn't work either exactly, and then we lost him because he had a commitment in Broadway. And then, so we had to start over one more time. And this time we got Adam Driver, who I work with on Silence, who's an absolute brilliant actor. And thank God we got him, and he stayed. And we got Penelope Cruz, and we got Shailene Whitley. And, once you have the cast, because you can't really go out and raise all your money and do all the other stuff until you have a full cast and you have a full budget and you have a full shooting schedule. And this particular budget, I think is public information. If not, then I'm going to have to edit myself later. But it was about $70 million, and that's an independent movie. So we did it outside of the studio system. So I think we broke some sort of for getting that done. And we've shot the movie in Italy primarily, and on some other locations. And Michael Mann is in the editing room right now, cutting it together with the brilliance of his mind and his vision. And I think it's going to be pretty spectacular. I had much less a role on Killers of the Flower Moon. Really, it was I had more of a role on The Irishman and on Silence. But yeah, Killers of the Flower Moon, it will be an Apple release, and it's with Leonardo DiCaprio. He's an up-and-coming young actor. Probably not heard of him.
Who is he? I've never heard of him. No.
Yeah, I don't know. There's another guy called Robert De Niro. Probably not ever heard of him either. No. He'll probably make it one day. Let's pray and hope for them both that they're gonna get some other jobs after this. Who knows? I could actually tell a fun anecdote real quick. When I sat at a Cannes Film Festival one time with Martin Scorsese at a press conference, and we're announcing a movie, and he invited this couple to sit next to us, and this beautiful people, and I'm sort of distracted and talking to this couple, and the older couple, and I said to them, "Hey, what are you doing in Cannes?" And they're like, "Oh, we're here to support our son." I say, "Oh, that's so nice. What does he do?" And they're like, "He's an actor." I said, "Oh, that could be so hard. How great to have supportive parents." It was Leonardo DiCaprio's parents. So what a douchebag I am, right? That was so embarrassing. They're like, because I was asking them, "Is he doing okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, he's doing pretty good." I was like, "Oh, that's great. Does he get jobs?" "Yeah, he gets jobs." I was like, "Oh, what a moron, Niels." Anyway, but yeah. So anyway, I'm very excited about both movies, and I'm working on a bunch of other movies at the moment, and I got a couple of things in the pipeline that I'm about to announce very soon. And I'm very fortunate to be working, and then being surrounded by remarkable directors and writers. I've developed, I must say, a big respect for writers. I gotta say, if there's any students out there that have a writing, gene in them, write, because the movie business is only as good as the story and the script. And writers is what we need more of. They tend to be overlooked sometimes, but without them, we have nothing really. And directors get a lot of accolades, and but I must say, I'm very fortunate to work with some extremely good writers, and I like to sit in the writers' room, and I like to help craft these great projects. And with Ferrari, I got to do that with Michael Mann, and I'm working with a very, very great writer right now on a couple of projects. And so that's being in the machine room, like when David is doing Nautica, and you're out there, you're building your thing, and you're doing everything, and it's like what we do on the movie, like. So yeah, so we have some great things coming up, and I'm very fortunate to be in my position at the moment.
So exciting for you, Mr. Chu. I just would be remiss if I didn't ask you about, and if this is not the right pronunciation, please correct me. Jensen Huhouse, is that correct?
What do you mean? George. Well, we in New York we call him George Jensen. But I only learned that when I got to Copenhagen. They said, Mr. Chu is not George Jensen, it's Gil Jensen.
Yeah. That's so nice, David. Well done.
Yeah.
Just perfect.
Yeah, no, I'm speaking about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. I was asking about the house you guys have for events and.
Oh, yeah, it was actually, we created a concept when I launched it when I was there, 2013. We launched it in Beijing. We actually created a Danish restaurant there with the showroom of Gil Jensen, because at that time when I was traveling there, of course, the famous cuisine came out of Denmark was Noma, and I was ability to meet with the founder, and actually quite a few friend of mine has created quite a few different restaurants, well-known restaurants in Copenhagen. We're able to get a young chef out of Copenhagen to move to Beijing to start this first Danish restaurant in China, actually. Wow. Probably. And then it became, actually now to start a Michelin restaurant the last 4 years in Beijing.
Wow,
it's
well
called
done.
The House of, now the restaurant is called Gil. It's just called George, the Gil. And because it was done in a way that I asked a pretty well-known interior. We took it a courtyard house originally, and then renovated the inside and made it into it's an art gallery plus a concept. It's a Danish restaurant with a very modern architecture on the interior, done by a Danish architect. And it's actually after many years, we're looking now to make a move into another courtyard house. So it's been a very successful kind of a project, and it's won 4 years Michelin restaurant in the world in Beijing. So it was quite interesting, and of course there's quite a lot of other projects I get involved internally. I'm potentially building a project in Chiang Mai. I've been spending a lot of time. How I discovered Chiang Mai is related to also Gil Jensen, because I had to do a due diligence when I got involved with Gil Jensen, to invest in Gil Jensen, that they had a really nice factory in Chiang Mai in Thailand. So I took a visit there, and I fell in love with Chiang Mai, and I started bought some property there. And now we have enough property. We're going to probably building a kind of a resort golf course. I'm working on that project next. So you'll live my architectural dream. So I've been working with different architects, and it's one thing leads to another, one of those things. And yeah, I've got a busy handful. My daughter's joining my company, so we're going to start a new kind of a travel gear collection that related to light, outdoor travel and exercise, kind of a performance-driven collection. We'll be probably looking to launch the end of this year sometime. So, these couple of things are a fun project that I'm, interested in working on. So it's interesting time, I have to say. After now the 2 years of pandemic that we weren't able to travel, so now we're able to travel again. So hopefully things are restart and a new beginning and a new projects, and we enjoy the next journey.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
It's fantastic.
Well, Niels, it was really great meeting you because, you know, it's fascinating you talk about the film. I was fascinated with, you know, anything related to film and these. I have some friends, and I met up with a friend of mine, very close with James Cameron. And I have a partnership. You know,
Nice.
with this whole thing about the digital filmmaking, we had a lot of conversation about. It's fascinating about the new Avatar movie that came on too. So I thought that was fascinating, and how the movie was filmed. So I'm really actually learning more with him. And you know, there's some of these areas around digital studios and how that created, what is that supporting industry. I'm very fascinated with that space right now.
It's very, very interesting space. What you can do with LED screens. I was just in Rome seeing the new studio that had built in Rome, just with LEDs, and you can create any place in the world in a matter of a big studio. So it's very fascinating time. But I want to say also, I'd like to make a reservation at your restaurant in Beijing, please. I'd like to make a reservation. For me and my wife, we're coming over. Okay, just letting you know, because anywhere I can get good Danish food, like. Okay, so
well, I'm pretty sure Joseph will connect us, and we're pretty soon that if you ever visit on this way, and you know, I'll be happy, you know, meet you, and I want to learn more about this digital, what, you know, all these film industries changing so much with digital technology. What is that going to be entail? I'd love to learn more about that. So I mean, looking forward to have more dialogue.
Yeah, that is an area that is exploding right now, and it's really fascinating because it actually is going to democratize the film business completely, and there's so many new opportunities there. And if you are in this space and you have studio spaces, etc., and you have access to good writers and good directors, I say that the distance between having a thought for a film and actually getting it made is just getting shorter and shorter and shorter, which is why actually today in the film business, the emphasis now has shifted over to content again, back to IP, meaning back to the story, back to the actual original, because the ability to get something made is actually getting better and easier, but it's the core talent, writer, directors, content that becomes now the thing, and then obviously how to, you know, get the talent attachment to these things, but the technology within the film business now has never been more exciting, for sure.
Fascinating. I'm looking forward to it, to talking about that.
Same
Oliver.
Yeah, and with that, I'm going to just hand it over to my colleague, Aaron, who will give you guys just a few quick student questions. But thank you both so much for taking the time. Again, I will hand it over to Aaron, but just on my part, that was so much fun to listen to you both. So many thanks.
I want to first say thank you so much for sharing your experiences and insights. I was listening by the part, and I was like, it was truly inspirational. And me as a designer, it like helped me navigate a lot. So a lot of the students from RISI and Brown are planning to go into the creative industry. What do you think is the single most important thing when launching a creative career?
For me, if you want to be in a creative career, it's be true to yourself and tell your own story. Be honest with yourself and trust your inner voice, trust your instinct. And then also don't be afraid of failure. That's a very important one. Just bring it out there. The overthinking or the perfection, like we talked about earlier on, is that it can be a danger. It could be a danger holding you back from expressing yourself and bringing yourself out there. There's always an audience for whatever you bring out there. And there might only be three, but those three people that you connect with are going to be very happy. And if you want to be creative, you cannot just think money first. You got to think content first. And then the audience comes after. Because manufactured creativity is one of the worst things that you can be, right? Because anyone, a producer or whatever, if you're in there, you can always smell if it's not real and it's not authentic. So I'd say you want to bring forward your ideas. You want to perfect it. You want to learn. You want to listen. You probably want to get a mentor. In most businesses, that's a good idea. But I'd say you stay true to what you have and you bring it out and you bring it forward and you don't hold it back for too long. And you trust your instincts as much as possible. I mean, David, I'll leave it to you, the rest, but that's my experience anyway.
No, I think you said it very well. I think the creative process really up to individual. And I think it just, as long that you are passionate what you do, and then pick a path. And it's a try and error. There's no formula to creative process. I think there's basically something, because every person is different background, different experience, different journey, that gives you different story. So you just how to able to articulate what your story you want to tell. I think that's that's the creative process.
Speaking of that, I have a specific question for Mr. Chu. You mentioned about finding an ultimate message through your works. Where are most of your inspiration coming from for launching like a fashion brand?
You know what, inspiration of whatever, you know what, I think the brand is a little bit overplay in the words. I think that when you have a creative, the thing doesn't become a brand until it's been out there long enough and been recognized by quite a lot of different people. Then it's become a brand. In the beginning, it's an idea. And I think the idea you throw it in, and if you really appreciate it, it begins to stick, and the people start gravitating to it. Then you got to bring its sustainability. Then in longevity, it becomes an iconic idea, good or bad or whatever you want to call it. So I think that I think it's the process that depends. The creativity, it comes from everywhere. What inspires you, you can take a reference point. So I think everybody looks at a different view. How people look at when I started Nautica, I was inspired. I was really kind of, for me, I love the beaches. I used to, when I was on vacation, I always go down the Caribbean. I was fascinated how beautiful the sea and how clean the water was, how crystal clear with the sun. And it was really more of a lifestyle of a beach kind of a lifestyle concept related to water, related to the ocean. For me, it's always I think, we humans, always fascinated by the sea. That's why I think that when I thought about, I just never saw a brand that really has the idea just purely about exploration, about, the traveling, the journey. And I think Nautica kind of says a certain idea about that. So, that's how I come up with this very simple idea. And I started out with only 6 outerwear jackets, and I just saw the jacket that are inspired by the sailing gears. And that was very colorful. It was when I launched it was only 6 styles. It was a very small idea.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And I think those kind of things. Yeah, so those kind of, I think every idea started out with just one idea. And then then it depends how you evolve and how you become, something where significant could become. You never know, if you look at many stories, Polo story, Ralph Lauren started out with a tie. It was nothing else more than just he collected a creative tie. So, in our industry, there's many interesting stories. And I think that, and everybody has just one idea to begin with. So I think, that's why I'm fascinated about this business. It's not an easy business, it's a very tough business. But, you just got to keep trying. Wow. Life is about trying.
Yeah.
Be positive, right?
Yeah. I have a question.
You fail, you come back.
Yes. So based on story, what do you think is the challenge that is facing the film industry today? And how do you plan to address that problem?
The film industry is in disruption right now, very much, because it's gone from theaters to streaming, and now it's sort of leaning back to theaters again and somewhere in the middle. And then there's some really significant players obviously coming into the game of film business, not least Apple and Amazon, etc., with some really deep pockets, and it's squeezing sometimes the independent producers into another area. And of course, there's also the fact that for the last many years, most of the big money has gone into sort of the big Marvel studio enterprises, franchises, Iron Man, etc. And the studios, the large studios, Warner Brothers, Paramount, etc. Because their machines are so big and their overhead is so huge, has really on these giant tentpole, franchises. And the streamers, and so are also in that game. So there's sort of a bidding war, bringing the price points very high these days. I mean, the last movie that I've been on was Killers of the Flower Moon, like I said, that it had a price tag of $200 million, and it's Apple coming in and writing that check, which is amazing. But it has left a big gap in the sort of independent movie market of the great movies that are sitting sort of between 10 and $20 million. That traditionally was the bread and butter of the Hollywood business and usually generated some of the best films in history. And right now, there's a movement back towards that, thank God, because for me, the quality fare lies usually there. And there's an opportunity now that has opened for, strong independent producers to come out with this kind of content. And there's new form of distribution that is happening as we speak that are not streamers and not necessarily traditional studios. And there's all sorts of things happening in Web3 and NFTs and whatever in terms of financing and places where people are enjoying content. So it's a very exciting place to be right now, the film business, but it certainly is also one where you have to wake up a little earlier than usual because, by the time the day is done, it would have changed again. So you better be up early and you better keep up with what's going on. And but again, it's only as good as the story. Like David said just now in the fashion business, one great idea, right? He had one great idea, one amazing vision, and he executed it really, really well. It's the same thing in the movie, right? If the story is great and you have a good director that can execute the vision and a great producer, it will always happen. But the market is changing, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. I have a final wrap-up question. Do you have any general suggestions for students stepping into the film entrepreneur and fashion industry?
For me, I tell my kids, I got 3 kids, and I tell them one thing: just be happy when you wake up in the morning doing what you're doing. If you're not, change. That's really it. Because if you're not happy doing what you're doing, if you're doing it for a paycheck or satisfy your parents or impress your boyfriend or girlfriend, and you don't feel good, but walk away, do something else. Because you know what? Life is not one linear thing. If you are out there and it doesn't feel right, move. And I have so many friends of mine around the world that complain a little bit about their lives. They're middle-aged. They're going, I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that. Well, guess what? You should have. Stop complaining about it. You didn't make the move. You didn't do the change. You were not working for yourself. You were working for having the next car in the garage or impressing your parents and doing this, that, and the other. You know what? Don't say should have, could have, would have. Just do it. And if it feels right in your gut, go do it. And if you're in a creative space and you want to be in the creative industries, follow that gut and then, and work with nice people. Work with nice people and work across cultures, like what David and I talked about earlier. You're nothing if you don't have great input from other cultures and inspirations from other places, and you don't look at the world in a globalized way. And maybe if I can end the world on a sort of high note, I think the best part of bringing the world together goes through creativity, right? And I think cross cultural and cross-border collaborations is one of the fastest ways to world peace and understanding, particularly in storytelling and in the creative industries, right? So I worked with China and Japan and Vietnam and Australia and all over the world. And I would never sit here today without having that inspiration coming from all over the world. So I think thinking globally and having good partners is also a very, very strong component to this. But again, follow your gut, and if it doesn't feel right, move. So that's it. Mm-hmm.
Karen, I guess life is a journey. Journey, because we all take many, many journeys in our lives. And then besides your career journey, what you want to achieve. And I think at the end of the day, you got to go back to your gut, as they say. What you're really passionate about. That's really one of the hardest things to understand yourself. And once you know what you really want to do, then you got to really check your tools. Do you have enough the tools to achieve what you want to achieve? If you want to be in the film industry, do you have enough know-how to get in there? And at the same time, or do you want to be an actor? You want to participate as a director? I mean, there are many different things in the fashion industry is the same way. If you want to be in the fashion industry, how you want to approach the industry? Do you want to be just really a retailer? You want to be able to editing the different design brand and start your own retail concept? Or do you want to start it out as a brand? I mean, many, many ways to participate in this industry. I think you just got to find out what is right for you and what your intuitively tell you what you enjoy doing. Because not everybody want to be in the fashion industry wants to create a brand. I mean, some people just enjoy the process, opening a beautiful store, and I'm enjoying the people that comes in and then they'll be an editor to buying all the best different brands and the best different product. I mean, there's so many ways to participate in the industry. I think you just got to decide what the tool, what the background, what fits you, and what you think you'll be enjoying. If you combine combination of those two, you'll find the path. I think you will enjoy your journey better.
Thank you very much for your talk today.